Welcome everybody, welcome back to the Recruiters Hangout 2015. It's good to be back after Christmas break. We're kicking off today with our first one, and we're talking about, is recruitment still a sales business? Are recruiters salespeople? We've got Bill Boorman here at the In-House Agency Expo. Hello Bill. We've got Brad Shackleton here. Hi Brad, thank you for coming. And we've got Roy Ripper here as well. The Rechangout is hosted by Colleague Software. I'm Louis Welcomme, colleague. Alan Whitford is our host, our main host from Abtech Partnership, RC Euro, Recruitment Strategist. We've got Mark Stevens here from Smart Online and the Recruitment Alliance. And we've got Louise Triance from UK Recruit as well. Louise will be keeping an eye on your Twitter posts. So if you are on Twitter, if you have a Twitter, please post using the hashtag Rechangout. Your comments and questions come back. We're also using Webinar Jam, a new tool. So a lot of you will see the chat box on the right here. So you can post in your questions, your comments. You're very welcome to please do so. I want to just thank the Recruitment Buzz who pushed out a little promotional piece for this. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to Alan to kick off this debate.
Welcome everyone, and I very carefully remembered to unmute so you could actually hear me this time. As Louis said, this is part of our new approach this year where we're going to be doing once a month so we can get a bit more pre- and post-game analysis and so forth going on. And we're really kicking off. We've got three guys who know everything there is to know about agency and in-house recruitment. With Bill, Brad, and Mr. Tipper himself. What I'll do is ask each of you guys to do sort of a 1-minute intro, and then we're going to kick into this, the leading question: is recruitment still a sales function, or is it something else? Brad, as you're the new boy in our Rec Hangouts, why don't you introduce yourself first? All right, Brad, can you hear us?
Yeah, sure. So my name.
Yep, just do a sort of a quick intro to who you are and why you're here.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Brad Shackleton, sales and leadership, both the recruitment and the sales industry as a whole, both in the UK and internationally. My background was in financial services recruitment. I was a £1 million biller and global top biller for a company called Robert Walters, and I've been in the coaching industry for the last 8 years.
Okay, that's great. Roy, what about you?
Hey, Alan, and everybody. Welcome. My name's Roy Ripper. Really is Roy Ripper. I've worked in the recruitment industry 27 years. I'm not quite as sure as that's as long as Bill's been in it, or Alan. I wrote quite a good book very recently. It's the #1 Amazon bestseller, Recruitment Blueprint, and I'm really looking forward to this debate. So, hi everyone.
Thank you, Roy. And Bill, the man with a hat, just for some of our audience who may not have heard of you, who are you and what do you do?
Hi, I'm Bill Boorman. I work in and around the recruiting business, primarily with technology companies like Colleague, and I'm a commentator and student of the recruiting industry. I've worked in and around the industry for, well, I'm 50 this year, and I started my first desk job at 16. So, and I've owned recruitment businesses and been a director of national business as well. So,
all right, thank you, Bill.
I used to train in the days when training was relevant.
Uh-oh, we might get Roy going on a completely different topic than on that one. Well, let's kick off with this. Back when I first started in recruitment, it didn't seem to be very successful until you accepted the fact that you actually were in a sales job, not in a I want to help people job. Is that still the truth today? Is recruitment really still about being a sales business? Bill, what do you think?
No. Is it or should it be? No is the short answer. I mean, is it or should it be? Should it be a sales business? I think that's one of the situations in the market that's really quite damaging, really, for the industry as a whole, is the approach towards sales, and the approach towards business generation, the approach towards control and volume targets of unnecessary, even the fact that we talk about making phone calls, for me is just it's kind of rooting the industry and the sector in history and should be condemned to a museum.
All right, Brad is $1 million plus biller, big biller, and I've seen you talk about this. I think you might still think it's a sales business, wouldn't you?
Well, it is a sales business because you need to pick up the phone if you want to have.
That's rubbish, Brad. Even the fact that we're saying you have to pick up the phone is showing a very dated way of thinking and communication.
It'd be good to listen to him first, Bill. Let's listen to his point.
Thanks, Roy. Ultimately, Bill, or everybody out there, relationships are built not, I don't believe, via email. They're built.
I think
built by communication face to face. Ultimately, people buy. I think initially, if you want to win someone's business, then you need to connect with that individual. And I don't see why technology should take over the traditional methods of having human contact with someone face to face or in conversation.
Does this fall in line with the theory of human computation, maybe, Brad?
So,
a current theory of human computation, you know, embracing technology but not removing the human engagement element.
Like I say, ultimately, I totally embrace technology, but who would rather be doing business purely via email. I haven't seen anyone who necessarily wins business via email in terms of how.
Can I just jump in here? Why are we talking about email?
Sorry. Okay.
Why email or why telephone? Why aren't we talking about things like instant chat, web communication, things like we're doing now? Things like we're doing now, where we're doing a webinar, we have Hangouts, we have group calls, where we might have whole one-to-one conversation in instant messaging. You know, email is also quite an old method of communication. It's not a new method of communication.
Sorry, Bill, I misinterpreted you. I thought you were suggesting that there shouldn't be any human interaction in terms of conversation.
No, you said specifically that you can only do business by picking the phone up.
No, sorry. Okay, what I'm saying is that ultimately we want to have a conversation with somebody. The methods as to how you do that, I'm not really fussed, but ultimately it's about developing rapport and a relationship with someone, and that requires conversation. And to me, that is part of the sales process. Is connecting with an individual and trying to build their trust.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I just don't know why we always talk about the phone or. And phone time, and that conversation has to be face to face, or meetings have to be in person, or anything like that. I just think it's a dated way of viewing the world.
So Bill, if I'll pitch in, and then I'll ask Roy to make some comments. To me, what we're talking about there is we're just saying that we have different communications channels, and you pick your communication channel depending on the constituency. So if I want to have a phone call, that's how you communicate with me. If I want email, fine. If I want to chat, fine. Whatever. If I want a letter, fine. But those are the tactical elements of how we carry on the conversation. That to me doesn't take it away from our core question about, is it still a sales operation or sales business? You know, I've got a sales client in the U.S. who does everything online, but they're still a sales business. Roy, what do you think of it? Is it communications channels, or is it process that we might be agreeing or disagreeing about?
Thank you, Alan. Look, the thing is, there seems to be this thing that sales is a bad thing, and I don't know whether, sort of Bill, just by his opening statement, kind of perpetuates that. Selling is not bad, and if you ask most, hang on a second, let me finish my point, Bill. If you ask most people to define it, what they'll say to you is, I don't like being sold to badly. if you have a good sales experience, and what I mean by that, you know, Bill's definition, I think, harks back to a day back in the 1980s and before, where cheesy sales techniques were trained to recruitment consultants, and some of those perpetuate to this day. But my definition of sales, and I think Brad's is probably the same as this, is good sales practice is questioning in terms of trying to understand a client's needs and a candidate's needs, listening, which is really, really important, rather than going through some prescribed scripts, proposing solutions rather than just trying to sell products in a productized environment, and then actually looking to deliver that solution and have a customer that comes back to you. Now, if that's my definition of selling, if that's a bad thing or that's out-fashioned or outdated, then I'm really pleased to be called out of fashion and undated. Good sales practice for me will always exist, and it will prevail. What I do want to do, though, is come back on this point about technology and social tools. I think Mark's point, human computation, is the right thing. We need to use and embrace technology to further engage with people. So, you know, Bill's point about using tools like Google Hangouts and Twitter and social engagement to engage with our candidates and our clients is a brilliant thing. So it's helped to speed up communication. But like Brad, I don't think it will ever replace somebody engaging with their clients and their candidates face to face and on telephones and embracing all these current technologies and future ones.
I find that, Roy, the thing I would raise is, you know, I know you've talked quite a lot or written quite a lot about offices being really quiet, the dying art of phone time. I think Brad started by saying getting on the phone. I just don't know why when we have so many other ways of communicating, why we persist in saying it's got to be on the phone and it's got to be doing this stuff. I just don't.
No, I'm not saying that, Bill.
I don't understand
let me try and explain
why we push that as being, you know, good.
Let me try and explain it to you so you do understand. I'm not saying, I don't think Brad is either, that telephones, you know, let's hark back to a time that all we had was a telephone. It's like, certainly use those tools, but look, Bill, you know this, everybody on this panel and everyone listening to this, recruitment has become this homogenized recruitment industry where, you know, people used to talk about, you know, uniqueness or something that you did differently. Now everyone's saying the same thing. Everyone's got a Twitter account. Everyone's got a LinkedIn account. It's all looking the same. What will differentiate people is their ability to question, to listen, to discuss and propose solutions or options, and then deliver on that and continue to deliver. So I'm certainly not saying, I don't think Brad is either, but let's let him speak, but I'm certainly not saying it's phone and nothing else. What I do say is that, yeah, I've walked into offices where it's just the click, click, click of a keyboard and people aren't engaging on telephones. It's almost like people are hiding behind, some people are hiding behind technology rather than embracing that and using it to speed up communication.
Yeah, if I can just jump in there, and Roy, I totally agree with you. You know, if I look at the companies that I consult for, the biggest frustration that directors have with their consultants is that people actually hide behind the screen. They're now hiding behind technology. And actually, if we can talk about such a word as conversion ratios, the conversion ratio of not jumping on the phone is far lower than if someone actually has the confidence and the know-how and the competency to pick up that phone and connect with that individual. And as Roy said, ultimately the sales process is about structuring that conversation, qualifying the client's requirements, proposing and pitching your solution, and hopefully getting some level of traction and commitment. So ultimately, for me, that is far more effective, you know, by a human interface of speaking technology than not. You know, for me, recruitment is all about sales. There's two elements. You know, ultimately, the sales is the lifeblood of any business. So if you look at a small business, medium-level size business, large company, they're all having to do business development in order to grow their businesses. And the second side of the business is the account management, and that's obviously, again, requires a sales process in terms of introducing client to candidate and vice versa. I don't see how we could say anything but the recruitment industry is not a sales industry.
Can I intervene with one point here,
sure,
which
Mark.
I think is critical? Isn't the sales element that in recruitment the ability to influence? Because at each stage in the life cycle of a recruitment campaign, both candidate and client, the recruiter is the conduit who influences outcomes to move forward to the next stage. And how can a successful recruiter be successful without influencing? And if we're going to influence, we need to adopt sales tactics.
Here.
I would agree with that one, Mark. Can I come in on that, Alan?
Yeah, absolutely, Roy.
Mark, I agree with you. I think our ability to influence a process is absolutely right. But I think what's happened is that there seems to be almost a confusion or a mishmash of people saying sales tactics, and harking back to a day, or an industry like, I don't know, car salespeople, where people were coerced or unfairly influenced into a decision to buy. I'd like to credit my candidates, my clients, and certainly consultants, and certainly the people that we speak to, with a lot more credit than that. I think I've worked in recruitment for 27 plus years now. I've yet to see a recruitment consultant go into a company, hit somebody over the head, stick that candidate in a bag and walk off with them, or use any brainwashing or mind mapping techniques in terms of trying to influence a candidate. What they can do is their professionalism, their questioning, their listening skills, their ability to propose solutions. Again, if they're using that skill to sell, maybe it's the word, maybe that's the bit that's kind of upsetting people. But if they're using those particular skills to sell, then we should be celebrating that. What's wrong with understanding someone's needs and delivering a solution that they want, i.e., either a career or a candidate that fills a requirement for them and helps that company grow? What's bad in that?
All right, so I think there's been a couple of interesting themes we've been having, guys, that are supporting this way we're going, both on the public chat as well as through Twitter. And I think maybe a couple things is for us to try and help understand a bit is, when we talk about is recruitment a sales business, as agencies, we have two audiences that we sell to. Three if we count our manager. We have to sell our business, our capabilities, our expertise to clients and potential clients, and then we have to sell a client as a company and its jobs to our candidates. So, and both of those sales have some different techniques, I would say, and I don't quite believe that we're going to get a huge amount of traction with our customers if all we do is use new media. We still need to use the phone. We still need, however we're doing it, human interaction. And I think Plowman has put up in the thing that, over the last 2010, his business has embraced all the technology, but combines it with traditional methods, which will never replace human interaction. And I think, however we look at it, that's the piece. And that's why I talked about it being choose your constituency in which communication channel they want to use. But it still seems to me and feels to me that however we're talking about this, we are still talking about having to use sales techniques. Would that not be correct? Roy? Nodding your head a lot?
Yeah, no, Alan, I agree. Look, and again, I think there is this confusion. I think, unfortunately Bill's gone, but I think he didn't help but by starting off the discussion saying, look, sales, it's not a sales industry. Sales are, nothing happens in this world before a sale takes place. Somebody once said that famously, a lot more famous than I. And it's absolutely true, absolutely true. But I think if you ask most people, they say, look, I don't want to be sold to badly. Now, our industry, rightly so, was guilty of a lot of sharp practice, a lot of really poor sales training, that was around 20, 30 years ago. And that sales training was very much, Brad, you'd have seen this as well. When we were growing up in recruitment, the training that was available before the likes of Tony Byrne and Steve Finkel, etc., came on board, the sales training that was there was very product orientated. You know, this is a pen, these are the features of this pen, this is the benefits of this pen. And Alan, it's always been my belief, you know, in the 27 years that I've worked, from working with people like Tony Byrne and Anne Swain and James Kahn, that recruitment was never a commodity. It was never a product sale. You know, recruitment services, I think one of the questions that came in, probably from Mitch Sullivan, one of the questions that came in is, you know, what are agencies selling? Back in the day, you know, the 1980s, 1970s, they probably were selling candidates. Now, I think it's about where we sell recruitment services, we sell ourselves, we position ourselves as experts and go-to people. That's not selling pens, you know, forget features, advantages, benefits, how it used to be sold back in the day. It's about using the tools that we have, again, you know, for fear of repeating myself and sounding boring, using the social media tools, and the tools that Bill described, you know, eloquently, using those tools to engage with an audience that we never could before. You know, now I can do one of these Google Hangouts and engage with people globally, whereas before it used to be within my little niche, probably within a 2-mile radius of my office. So I love technology, I love the tools that are available to us, but like Brad, you know, I'm very, very proud to say that recruitment is a sales industry, remains a sales industry, and you know, and I will do everything within my power to drive good standards of selling within our industry. I certainly don't condone bad selling.
Yeah, can I just say something as well as that possible?
Yeah, Brad.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
I agree, Roy. You know, the sales process and people's sales competency definitely needs to, I still think, improve. It's interesting, you know, when you walk onto a sales floor and people are putting BD calls in and they are kind of asking if that client has any jobs on. I think that both client and candidates are now looking for a far more sophisticated, educated approach to how they connect with the client or a candidate, and I think that is still at times. The greatest thing I see is really a lack of formal approach and methodology as to how we execute our client and our candidate conversations. And you know, Roy has, I'm sure, some great. It's interesting that without training, people tend to go off in very different directions in terms of how they wish to try and sell to clients or candidates, and that's when it can become dangerous. And if you consult with clients and candidates, they're looking for a far more consultative approach rather than someone diving straight in with the pitch. The biggest problem you have is that people think sales is all about pitching, but pitching is only one part of the sales process. And if anyone who's listening who is you know, with their recruiters today, you know, let's make sure that we actually are building rapport, we're qualifying the clients first, and we're showing that we understand and summarising that understanding of what it is they're looking for before we start to pitch. I think Alan said a great thing earlier as well. Make sure you listen to everything before you decide to start pitching, because that's when a lot of the times the landmines, as Tony Byrne used to use, you know, that's when they're dropped. So ultimately, I think more of a consultative conversation is now required, especially if you're trying to develop new business, because ultimately, for me, the differentiation in your methodology and your approach is as important as the actual proposition that you're making, and it's the first thing that the client.
Yep, sorry. Yeah, and what I would say is, and thank you, Brad. So you break up once in a while, Brad, so if we cut you off, it's not intentional. We just thought you were finished. Okay. We've had some really good conversation, by the way, going in the public chat, and I think there's a couple themes that are coming through here. What I'd like to do is just a quick reset. We'll talk about those, then bring you guys back in. This is Alan Whitford. We're doing hashtag Rechangout, our first one of the year. Our theme is recruitment, a sales business these days. We're joined by the inimitable Roy Ripper and Brad Shackleton, both guys who have huge amounts of experience in recruitment. We had Bill, the man in the hat, Boorman, on at the beginning of the show, and he's had to leave us for another commitment. We've been getting some great streams through our new sidebar, which is part of the Webinar Jam piece. If you're watching us on Webinar Jam, keep feeding the questions in. And obviously we've got our core group of Louis Welcomme, Louise Triance, and Mark Stevens, along with me, Alan Whitford, for the show today. We've had a debate around whether or not we are in recruitment is a sales business. And I think some of the themes that have come out from some people in our stream, Sam, we've got another guy, Mike Achilles, we've had Steve Barnhurst from Broadbean, a couple others talking about, well, maybe we need to really be defining what we mean by sales. So, and some of the supporters of Bill, who was sort of, no, it's not a sales business at the start, were more along the lines of, if we just mean total cold calling, then maybe Bill's right. It isn't a sales business if that's all we mean is cold calling. But the theme that seems to be here in the stream is more about qualification. Isn't that one of the keys? And I think, Brad, this kind of goes a bit to what you were just saying, that, you know, if sales is a qualification business, whether we're qualifying companies, whether we're qualifying the job order that we have that we want to work on or not, whether we're qualifying candidates, then yes, certainly we are in sales. And I think that some of the other stream that we've had, if I'm going through our chat, our public chat, is people are talking about that as an industry we've had to move more to become trusted advisors. Now, I think we'd all love to say that. We'd all love to say that's very aspirational. But Mitch Sullivan, who we're trying to see if we can get onto the show as well, would say, yeah, like if you really believe that companies think their recruitment agencies are trusted suppliers, then we're in another universe, to paraphrase Mitch. So I think we have this dual challenge, don't we, where we know we need to use some of the best practices of sales, and yet at the same time, do our customers actually believe in us if we're too salesy? You know, Brad, what do you think about that? Are we too salesy? Do our customers believe us?
Well, I think, you know, it's how you define too salesy. I think too salesy comes in terms of which I think the sales process for me is as much as you've already said about the qualification and showing that understanding, but also you know, digging deeper. I always push all recruiters when they're speaking to clients and candidates to ensure they just continually ask why. You know, when they're qualifying the clients, they're qualifying candidates. What is you need? Because ultimately, you know, a candidate who's looking for a new opportunity, this is a major life-changing decision. And too often, maybe my biggest criticism of recruiters would be that they're very quick to qualify, pitch, and get off the phone and get on to other candidates. I think, you know, it's how you define too salesy. I think
Mitch, mute your audio, mate. There we go.
I think the sales process for me is as much as you already said about the qualification and showing that understanding, but also.
There we go. Sorry about that, folks. We had some feedback. Brad, carry on.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, I think that, you know, if you can take an interest in that individual and understand the bigger picture as to what it is they're looking for and why, I find that you know, there is some good differentiation there as opposed to purely pitching. It becomes salesy when you're purely pitching, I find.
You're on mute, Alan.
Jeremy, do you have a comment? I think we lost Brad a bit. Roy?
Sorry, Alan. Yeah, look,
sorry, yeah.
I think one of the questions that came up, and good to see Mitch on the panel again. One of the questions that came up earlier was this definition of selling, and I really want to try and do that. You know, there's people tuning into this call that will get lost in terms of, you know, some of the definitions, etc. I want to really define this. The clients that we use, okay, so the clients that we engage with, the clients that you use as a recruiter, if you're a consultant or a manager or a recruitment business owner, your clients love you. Your clients love working with you if you deliver a great service, and that's a brilliant thing. I think the confusion has come around this: how do you attract new business? Now, if you listen to Bill and people like Mitch, they'll tell you, look, you know, it's not about you making outbound call activity. It's not about you, you know, presenting your solutions to the world. It's about you just setting up and hoping, fingers crossed, that that business is going to come to you. I totally disagree with that. I think using social media, using technology to, and a content marketing plan to be able to position yourselves as, the phrase you used, Alan, was the trusted advisor, is a good thing. You know, it's like if you're within a niche and you talk about your niche and you engage in social media, you take part in forums and groups and discussions, and you're seen as a contributor, as a positive contributor to those media, then clients and candidates will find you. But in order to go out and get business, there is nothing, you know, look, the #1 business development technique for recruiters worldwide, and I've got some authority in this, I've trained 42,500 of them over 26 countries over 27 years. The #1 BD technique for recruiters worldwide is marketing out a placeable candidate, finding somebody, finding out who they'd like to work for, and then approaching those companies proactively. It works. And look, just before anyone else jumps in, I want to share with you a story. That technique for one of my clients yesterday got them talking to a client where they are going to probably over the next couple of years have 3, let me just give you the figures on here, 3 or 4 projects over the next year worth from £40,000 to £250,000 in revenue. That's from an outbound call. So look, we can talk all we like about, yeah, you know, we shouldn't be salesy. You know, I hate that word. I really hate that word. Should we be proactive in presenting ourselves and getting our candidates out to market? Damn right we should. And until somebody comes up with a technique that's going to generate that type of income from social media activities, I think the best and the most professional recruiters will continue with that method.
Okay, so I appreciate it. I think that's Roy. I think that's a good positive point you made. And let's not forget, we are in this you know, also to make money, not just to serve the joyful clients out there. I'd like to see if we can try and bring Mitch in. Mitch Sullivan is joined us after making a few comments. We thought we better bring him on air so he gets to put his comments in full bore. So Mitch, if you unmute, and then give us a quick 1 minute on who is Mitch Sullivan. And then, you know, what you actually think about this theme that we've been talking about so far about recruitment sales and why not?
Well, first of all, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good, Mitch. Go ahead.
Now and clear.
Well, I'm not going to waste time bothering people with who I am. I'm kind of fascinated by this discussion around selling. You know, what it is people think recruiters sell. You know, I've heard things from, you know, themselves to solutions to candidates to being a trusted advisor. All of it sounds a bit vague and kind of airy-fairy to me.
What do you think it should be, Mitch?
Well, maybe we'll get onto that, but let's just define what currently is happening. And currently, recruitment agencies are trading candidates. They're not recruiting. They're not selling.
Silence.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. All right.
What do you
What's
think,
selling,
Roy?
Mitch? What's selling?
Roy, sales is what happens when a product or a service is given or provided to a third party in exchange for money. What do you think selling is?
I actually think it goes, and actually in these days, Mitch, it's a lot deeper than that. You know, selling for me is asking questions. Selling for me is not
asking questions. Roy, is part of selling.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Sales process.
So yes, I'm defining that process, Mitch. And what I'm
not defining a component of sales. Define what selling is. That's what the original question was.
Yeah.
Why does selling have to be defined?
Well, if we don't know what we're doing, it's kind of hard to move forward, isn't it?
Well, it's a complex set of question to ask anyway, and it can be defined to any one particular product or service or business. At the end of the day, you know, we're influencing people, we're persuading people with our opinion, and whether our opinion might be to say that this is a good candidate you should consider, and you know, challenging the candidate or the client by dealing with the objection that they present to us, are in essence sales techniques. Are they not?
Yeah, but to use that specific example, Mark, that kind of thing only happens at the point in the relationship where the client has already bought into you, buys recruitment services from you, and will listen to what you have to say about any given micro situation. Nobody, you know, recruiters can't influence hiring managers when they don't know anything about the business or the company, and most don't, because They only work on contingency. All they're ever doing is spot trading candidates into other people's recruitment processes.
Mitch,
I
I
think you
think
start by
you're...
selling yourself, don't you? Sorry, Roy.
Yeah,
And then
people buy
the
from people.
product,
Yeah, I know.
the product and the service that you're selling changes throughout the life cycle
Of course it
of the
does.
recruitment campaign.
Of course it does. But at some point, you know, in the same way that companies buy advertising services from agencies or marketing services from or legal services, they commit to buying them up front in exchange for a promise that a solution is going to be delivered. And the problem recruiters have is they'll, you know, they generate that. Their definition of a sale is to get a job, and when they get a job, they have an opportunity to pitch a candidate. And if they pitch badly or are unable to fill the job, which happens, as you know, 80% of the time, then that company or client, and I don't really like using the word client in this scenario, are less likely to want to re-engage. And it gets progressively harder each time. And then on the odd occasion when the recruiter does make a placement, all that they've embedded in the client's head is that their service is ad hoc and difficult to predict.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. So, yeah?
Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I agree. I think the problem is that I find a lot of recruiters actually lack focus in terms of who they are selling to, who their actual target market is, the target companies, and the target opportunities that they want to be sourcing and pitching for. I think that's one of the key weaknesses, is that it's a scattergun approach, and as a consequence, the profitability and the conversion rates that people have, as I think it was Mitch was suggesting there, they can be rather unsuccessful because they are.
Sorry, Brad, we lost you a bit there again. Well, I think where Brad's trying to go too, and I think Mitch a bit, so maybe this is about... Yeah, Brad, we seem to keep losing you there. Are you back?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me now?
We've got a bad connection there.
You need to make a couple more sales, Brad, and upgrade that Wi-Fi, I think.
I don't know why we're having a problem today. Apologies.
And I can say this because I usually end up broadcasting from the car to get good enough Wi-Fi, so don't worry, it's not just you we're picking on. You know, Mark put together a couple ideas before the show, and I think it's an interesting theme about do we define it as sales or not, but what are we actually thinking if we are defining it as sales or self-help, or I'm not quite sure where we've still got to that, but if it is a sales operation, don't we need to actually think about, well, what are the right KPIs for our business? What about our recruiter incentives? Is it still about if I ring more bells than the other guy, I get to go on holiday to the Maldives or whatever? Can we actually train candidate control? You know, we could spend days on that one. You know, what are the techniques, the sales techniques, if we are going to do sales? And Roy, with your 47,000 people you've trained, you know, did you have specific sales techniques that you teach them? You know, I mean, I know the old sales wheeze. Hey, you know, imagine if your kid was sick and you needed to buy goat's milk at $1 a day, you'd find a way to sell that to them, wouldn't you? So, I mean, are we back to those old kinds of closes, or are we a bit more sophisticated than that?
It's a really good question, Alan. Louis and Louise know I just did a training program, a live online training program, and there was about 130 recruitment offices globally joined this program. The program is called Sales Superstars, and you know what? We kicked off. The first session was all about closing, and Mitch, you're going to love this. I kicked off with the statement that, you know, closing isn't something that happens at the end of the conversation. You know, traditional sales training, that training I was talking about 30 years ago, was all about, you know, close is the most important thing. It's right at the end, and you've got to ask for the order. You know, I kicked off the first session with that, and I just said, look, you know, those closes, those old-fashioned closes, the things that worked in the 80s when you were selling pens and cars, etc., just aren't as relevant to the recruitment industry these days. You know, Mitch was saying about process. Well, for me, selling is a lot more complex than just a definition. I think it is a process. I think the most professional recruiters that I certainly work with pride themselves and distinguish themselves away from the majority, away from the minority that perhaps Mitch describes, the minority of recruitment consultants that are out there sort of harking back to 80s techniques. The vast majority that I speak to, the ones that I engage with, really pride themselves on understanding what their clients and candidates are looking for. There is this distinction. I think it's really important to make, Alan. Mitch said, the clients that you deal with, absolutely brilliant. When you're engaged with a client or you're engaged with a candidate, you can then demonstrate your ability. You can really, but to win brand new business, you do have to do something other than just sit and wait for the phone to ring or your inbox to ping. And that's where I think the smart consultative recruitment consultant, the professional recruitment consultant, is really coming into their own.
Selling isn't
Thanks,
selling.
Roy, and I think we're getting that. Yeah, we're having that theme also coming through our chats from people like Bob Kelly and Mike Achilles and a couple others who are actually talking about the fact that, if you don't have a job, it doesn't mean you just sit around and read the paper. You actually do some marketing. You have to do other work, don't you? So is that marketing or is that sales? Either way, we've got to go get our business out in front of people. Mark, you've been a recruiter for a long time as well. If you didn't actually go market the recruitment business to clients, you wouldn't have any jobs to fill, would you?
Absolutely. I think that what we've got to understand here is that this is a multifaceted role, and sales is an integral part of it to influence at the appropriate moments. It's not sales from the start right through to the end. We don't continuously deploy sales techniques badgering the people that we deal with, but we are facilitators. We sit in between two people. We're not talking about a product and a person and influencing that person to buy that product. We're talking about two people that change their mind and are influenced themselves, and therefore we need to control the way that both parties think and believe and behave around the opportunity that we're all working on. We've talked about us as recruiters being facilitators and hosts in the process, but the bottom line is people find it difficult to make decisions, both candidate and clients, and that's part of our role, is to help influence to get the outcome that both parties want.
Okay, but let's.
Okay, I think that's fair, Mark. Go ahead, Mitch. Yep.
Let's not.
Mitch, go ahead.
Let's not overcomplicate this. At the end of the day, all clients want is for someone to fill their job. And all they want to do is, when they talk to a recruiter, who will guarantee that they will fill that job, not that they might be able to fill that job. That's where selling happens.
Mitch, could I ask you a question?
Of course.
Okay, how would that client find the recruitment consultant? I'm just really interested in your definition of how.
Why do they have to find them? Why do they have to find them? What if the agency targets that company and calls them? And starts a sales process.
Okay, isn't that's what we've been talking about sort of during this conversation, which is companies calling. So you're advocating that, are you?
Yeah, absolutely, of course, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I thought there was a difference. I actually thought the earlier introduction was that, like Bill's, that calls were unfashionable. We shouldn't be making those. But you're agreeing with that. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. They've become unfashionable, Roy, because people have evolved into becoming so bad at it, particularly in our sector.
Yeah, the ones that and that's the point I want to make. I think it's really easy to make general sweeping statements about our industry. The vast majority of people that I come across are professional and pride themselves on doing a professional job. They don't approach it in the way that I think you're suggesting.
Roy, I receive a lot of calls from agencies, less so in the last year or so, but more so 4 or 5 years ago. And believe me, I gave all of them the opportunity to sell to me, every single one of them. And 90% can't. It's just, do you have a job? No, not at the moment. Yeah, and it just goes nowhere, and all I end up getting back is, we have great candidates.
I'll tell you what, Mitch, if you want a recommendation to some good agencies, let me know, because I train a lot of them.
Okay, well, how about we set up an experiment, Roy? You get one of your best trainees to give me a call, and to sell me something, and I'll even record it.
Only if you've got only if you've got a fee to pay. I wouldn't want to waste their time just speaking to you for a role play, Mitch.
I think.
I think they've learned something out of it, Roy, personally. So
yeah, I'm sure.
But anyway, the offer's always there. The offer's always there.
Roy, we could get you to ring up and pretend to be a recruiter looking to win his business. We'll record it.
Roy, one of our sales guys here rang someone who was in your LinkedIn group from your training webinar, and they said, "Well, you've watched it. Pitch to me now."
Were they any good?
Goodbye.
Don't answer that. Yeah.
So I'll bring up a point here, by the way, from our side. One of our viewers thinks that we've now turned this webinar into a sales vehicle for recruitment training. So hopefully your inboxes will be jammed afterwards. A couple of quick things. We've had a poll going on the WebJam sidebar, really asking a question about whether or not recruitment is a sales. I'm going to close that poll in a couple of minutes, and then we'll share the results with our attendees. And also just a couple of the themes we've been picking up, which Sophie, for example, also believes that clients might be looking to us for market information, benchmarking, not just about candidates. We should be getting value added from the correct recruitment supplier. Brad, does that fit in with your normal model? Does that get in the way of being a big biller if you're providing those other services as well?
Yeah, potentially, yes. I mean, I just want to go back to a previous point that I feel the biggest problem is that people with a client and position themselves effectively. And I think that ultimately, when you're approaching a client and picking up on Mitch's point, he is right. A lot of people are calling up just asking.
Well, we'll give it another second, Brad.
Of who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Brad, we're having a little bit of trouble again with your connection getting through to us on that. We'll try that again. We've also had a couple of questions from our readership and viewership, if you will, wondering about if we are talking about we need to just have good salespeople, but as Mitch has pointed out, there's an awful lot of bad salespeople out there, which then ends up giving our industry a reputation pretty much somewhere down on the same level as used car salespeople.
Alan,
I would say that isn't. Yep.
Well, I wouldn't even go as far.
Say that again, Mark.
I wouldn't even go as far as to call them bad salespeople. They just simply don't sell. Bad sales is where you get promised something and nothing gets delivered, or nothing like what was promised gets delivered. That's bad salesmanship.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the model that most recruitment agencies work to facilitates that ad hoc delivery, because it's very hard to create an impression with a client that you know what you're doing.
All right, so if that's the case, Mitch, and then Roy, Brad, in your training, and Mark, when you trained your salespeople, what is it we should be training for? Are there sort of 3 pillars, as Mark's called them, that we need to focus on? Is it about candidate care, client care? In the old days, it was how do I turn the cards, and I still need to be able to turn those cards, but what are the 3 pillars, if you will, that you would say, this is what I've got to be able to train my salesperson, because we've agreed, I think, essentially that there's an element of sales in whatever we have to do as recruiters. What are those 3 key pillars I need to train on? Roy, I'll let you go first.
Thank you, Alan. And actually, I do want to come back.
Not putting you on the spot at all, of course.
No, it's fine. It's okay. I agree with Mitch, and I'm actually really pleased to be on this webinar and find myself agreeing with him. It's quite a strange sensation, but Mitch, I do agree with you. I think, bad selling is those things. I also think there's always been bad selling in recruitment. 27 years ago when I started, there were poor recruitment consultants then. There are poor recruitment consultants now. But actually, there's some really good exponents of their craft. There are some very, very good recruitment consultants out there that sell in a consultative way, ask questions, understand needs, listen, deliver solutions or options on those solutions, and then deliver. And I actually think that whilst all of that bad practice is out there, good practice, it's really easy for them to be seen as good. You know, what is it? It will always surface. Quality will always surface. In terms of, you know, where I would teach or train selling skills, it's that word consultative. You know, if I was out there and teaching anybody, it would be, rather than trying to sell a predefined service or a predefined solution, learn to ask lots of questions. You know, learn to ask lots of questions, because, you know, it was a long time ago, again, 30 years ago, I was taught by somebody, ask the right questions of a candidate and they'll tell you how to place them. Ask the right questions of a client and definitely listen to the answers, and they'll tell you how to make placements with them. I don't think that's changed today at all. That would be my biggest piece of advice.
The problem, Roy, fundamentally you're right. It's a generic truth. Absolutely, ask the right questions. The reality is that clients can't be expected to have those level of conversations or Q&A sessions with all of the recruiters that ever call them. So how do they differentiate? Because believe me, Roy, I've been sucked into 20-minute conversations with recruiters, explaining to them what I'm trying to achieve, as you know, when I worked in-house in terms of filling jobs, where I've genuinely been open to them helping, and you don't hear from them again, or you get something that's less than what you expected. So it wears people down, and that's where we're at today in this industry. Is more and more clients understand how recruitment works because of all the blogs and the discussions and nurturing that goes on in places like this as well, and they've just got wise to it, and that you know it needs something new and real to interrupt this, because it's a clusterfuck is what it is. Sorry for the language, guys, but that's what it is.
All right, now we're going to be taken off the air. Thanks very much for that.
You're welcome.
Hopefully we don't have any kids watching this show. We should be in the right time for that.
I'll tweet
a couple quick things, and then Brad, I'll come over to you for your 3 pillars. Louis, you need to be editing with the beeper a bit faster there. A little bit of conversation going on between Mike Achilles and Plem and a couple others about fill rates. That you know, maybe contingent agencies are only filling about 20%. Plem is going, I'm filling 100% because I only get guaranteed work. I think that comes back to that earlier phrase we used about sales, about qualification. If we just take every single job order that a client wants to throw at us, well, we're going to be hopelessly inadequate at being able to fill all those jobs. So part of that sales process needs to be qualification and being honest with the client. They say, well, I need you to find me a left-handed, one-eyed, green-skinned widget manufacturer, blind guy in outer Mongolia.
I've got one. You
know what? We might not be able to fill that job. Okay, let's be honest about it. Don't just take every single job because we're desperate to have jobs. Be honest with them and say, look, let's get real. We're not going to fill that job. You might be better off advertising the Mongolian Times and see if someone shows up, rather than depend on me to be able to do it. It's out of my comfort zone. So, Brad, when you have your 3 pillars, is that kind of qualification? Is that one of the things that's really that the recruiter has to be thinking about before they start working on the jobs? And Brad, are we still there? Have I lost you, I think?
Yeah.
Oh, coming back.
Feed looks
Brad, I'm afraid we keep losing you there.
Can you hear me?
Mitch, what do you think about that as a concept? Do we have to qualify the jobs we take more effectively?
Absolutely. Nothing worse than taking on a job that you're not confident in filling. But that comes back to my original point of, you qualify the job. If you think you can fill it, you commit to filling it, and then you sell that to the client. You sell that certainty to the client, and in exchange, that client will give more of themselves than they currently do if you can offer that certainty rather than just a maybe.
Okay. Guys, I see maybe we're running near the end. We got about 5 minutes left to go. It might be a good time just to do a bit of a whip around and a bit of a wrap up. Our poll, by the way, in case we haven't read the sidebar, we asked the question, is recruitment still a sales business? And 90% of the respondents said resoundingly yes, it is. But 10% said no. So you 10% that said no, if you want to ping a note into chat in the chat function about why you said sales recruitment is not a sales business, we'll try and get your view out there earlier before we close. I think our theme was around this. I think we generally, as a group, think that yes, recruitment is a sales business, but it's about defining what we mean by that. I think as a group, we're generally pretty much confident that it's not about just turning the cards and cold calling. It's about being more about qualification, about being understanding our client, understanding our candidate, so that we can do a better job all the way around. Training is required, but it's not just about the old-fashioned close at any cost. That's my sort of some takeaways. Roy, how would you sort of sum up what we've talked about today?
Thank you, Alan. But the first thing is, I think traditional methods of recruitment or gaining new business will never go away. But you know, doing that with targeted contact. So our existing clients or targeted clients or prospects that you want to deal with, using those traditional means in order to do it. So, you know, marketing out candidates, reference checks, etc., to do that. Secondly, I would say to any recruitment business owner out there that manages recruiters, you've got to have some kind of content marketing plan. And what that's doing is it's almost like it's your window, so people can see what you're about, they can see what you stand for, and you can position yourselves as experts within your field. And then the third thing is leverage social media. You know, you've got to be seen in the places where your audience are. You know, so work out where your targeted audience is. If that's LinkedIn, be on LinkedIn. If it's Twitter, be on Twitter. So those are the three things that I would say in summary. Is it a sales business? Very definitely. Nothing happens in this world without a sale taking place, and I'm really proud to be part of it.
All right, Mitch, what do you say?
Broadly, recruitment
Bit of a wrap up from your side, Mitch?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Broadly, recruitment is in the sales business, but unfortunately most sales in recruitment happen behind the activity, and it tends to get closed by clients and candidates. You know, the recruiter doesn't make anything happen because that they're working to a 20% success ratio. So listen, you know, I'll leave you with, you know, my advice to decent recruiters out there is identify who your best clients are, or the clients you know the most about. Sell them a real recruitment service, one where you're confident you're definitely going to fill their vacancies, deliver on it, and then keep getting more and more business out of those companies. Because you'll probably hit more than your targets by getting more business from your existing base than having to keep hitting the phones looking for new companies, or spending money and time building a content marketing system.
All right, brilliant. Thanks, Mitch. And thanks, Mitch, for joining us mid-show as well. Brad, over to you. A bit of a wrap. You know, hopefully we'll be able to hear all of your information and knowledge today. What did you think?
Yeah, I'm hoping so. For me, I think if you want to be successful in sales, then I think, as Roy's just said, and also Mitch, get focused on who you want to sell to rather than trying to sell to the masses. So that you can increase your chances of success or chance of success with those companies. I think the second thing is, you know, think about specific sales strategies you want to use to connect with those individuals. CVs, yes, and marketing is one thing, but I think there are many more than that. And thirdly,
2 out of 3 wasn't bad.
you know, just
I know. Come on, Brad. Come on, Brad. Bring it back. All right, Brad, I'm afraid we lost you at point 3, so we're going to have to hold off on that, but there at least we've got your picture back. Guys, we're pretty much at the end of our normally allotted hour. I'm going to hand back over to Louis in a minute. But again, just to thank you, everybody, both our panelists, even, you know, Bill, who's left us, Mitch, who stepped in, you know, obviously, and Roy and Brad. Also, thanks to the audience. We had a lot of live conversation going on in this sidebar with a webinar jam, some really good conversation. a lot of people sharing their own experiences and their own thoughts at the same time. And thanks for putting up with us trying to figure out how that actually works. Louis, over to you for a bit of a wrap, and what are we doing after this?
Thanks, Alan, and thank you all again. Fantastic show. We are putting together a slide share for each show, which will wrap up the best points of the show from all our guests. I'd like to get some follow-up content summarising what everyone had to say out to everyone watching. It'd be good to get a bit more from Bill. Unfortunately, he had to pop off on his point of view, and so we'll get some more information out to you guys and a bit of contact details and links and so forth of all of our guests. I have put up a link to our LinkedIn group on the Webinar Jam chat. Please join that, post your questions, post your comments, and I'll ask the guests to join as well and give any feedback and perhaps get the debate carrying on there. In terms of our next show, it will be either the second or last week, Wednesday of February. We're still organising that, but we'll get back to you. We're hoping to do one on LinkedIn sourcing this year, using techniques to find candidates on LinkedIn and so forth. We're hoping to do another one on the best recruitment company to work for based on the Sunday Times list, and we'll be doing one on branding and marketing at some point as well. So do keep a lookout. We're doing one a month. You're all very welcome to come back again. I think that's it.
Thanks, Louis.
That sounds like that's it, Louis. Thank you, team. Another excellent show. Thank you, everybody. Sign up for the next one. Read Louise's blog at the end. Louise is the silent face in the middle, by the way. She writes a great blog on UK Recruiter, which Louis and I then shamelessly republish. And Mark on Smart Recruit always has some good follow-up blog posts as well. So join in with it, Jeremy, Mitch, and all the other you all in about 4 weeks' time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Alan.